One swallow does not a summer maketh, and that's how I feel about Andrea Kimi Antonelli. The news coming out today, as at the 8th of the 8th, 2024, is that Andrea Kimi Antonelli is set to be announced as a Mercedes driver as at September the 1st of this year. Oh, the humanity. What's changed here, Toto, the boy who cried wolf? Because I'm struggling to solve for this Rubik's Cube, this F1 Rubik's Cube in real time, I will be honest. How do you fit Messrs Verstappen, Russell and Antonelli all into two seats? Because three does not go into two. I don't get it. I don't understand what's going on. Remember, for the avoidance of doubt, that Toto, the boy who cried wolf, has made it patently clear that he will drop kick a George Russell in his chest, and so too an Andrea Kimi Antonelli, to get a sniff of the signature of Maximilian Verstappen. So make this make sense then. What's happened? Is this a compare and contrast the market, a before and after yet again? Has something changed erstwhile over the past couple of weeks as far as getting Maximilian Verstappen's signature? Has the probability of that for Mercedes reduced now that we have an unwanted entrant in Aston Martin at the hands of Lawrence Stroll? I don't know. Still getting techie, but Planet F1 reports that Andrea Kimi Antonelli is set to sign a contract with Mercedes for 2025. Now, remember, before the tact was this, do you remember they'd asked for special dispensation, either James Vowles or Toto Wolff from the FIA, around the Maximilian Verstappen rule, meaning that Andrea Kimi Antonelli could drive for one Williams before his 17th or 18th birthday even. The Max Verstappen rule means that you cannot, if you can't get a license in your home nation, then you can't get a super license to drive an F1 car. In Italy, in Antonelli's home nation, the age of driving is 18. He's only 17 until August. The rumour was that as at Monza, when he turns 18, that he was going to supersede Logan Sargent for that Williams seat. And that made sense in my mind. What you don't want to do is bring along Andrea Kimi Antonelli too fast. You don't want him to be the next Nick de Vries. One swallow in F1 does not a summer maketh. Yeah, he's done well thus far in F2. Yeah, he overtakes at Eau Rouge in monsoon conditions, and that's worthy of note. But so too did Juan Pablo Montoya look fantastic at times during his tenure, did he not? Nick de Vries looked fantastic on his return to F1, but we know how that story ended, and it wasn't good, was it? I say again, for the avoidance of doubt, in Formula One, you need to assess these things in longer form, because one swallow does not a summer maketh. Andrea Kimi Antonelli's already been rushed along. He's already skipped F3 as far as his progression. Now, yeah, he looks a little bit like Senna, but yeah, and still, you've got to deliver over long term. You can't just race one good race and overtake in Eau Rouge at Belgium. That's very sexy and it's a story, and they will write headlines about it, of course. But yeah, and still, for me, in my humble opinion, I don't think that's good enough. I don't think that's evidence sufficient to rush that dude through to replace Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton. Are you bonkers? Those are not small, not insubstantial shoes. That's the dude that you're going to have Andrea Kimi Antonelli supersede. 7-time champion, GOAT setting, Singapore 2018. That doesn't sound right to me. I don't think it passes the smell test. But that's the news. How is Andrea Kimi Antonelli doing in long form in F2? So we know that Prema have had issues this season, but surely he'll be up there. Top 5 maybe, top 3 potentially. No. Andrea Kimi Antonelli is in 7th position in F2 Championship this season. Now, the caveat is, of course, that he's been fast-tracked. This was meant to be his season in F3. He's in F2 now. So in promoting him, therefore, to F1, you're almost skipping an additional step. Surely he should win the feeder formula that is Formula 2 before he steps in a Mercedes car. But they are sufficiently impressed, are they not? They've seen him testing. They think he's quick. There have been F3 engineers who have told Karun Chandhok that this dude could be a generational talent. And Toto Wolff, keen not to repeat the mistakes of Christmas past in not signing Max Verstappen when he knows that he should have. He's keen to expedite it. But what does that mean, chat? What does that mean, Madeline? Antonelli is destroying Behrman, and that guy has an F1 seat. I like the F1 maths, Madeline, but I would contend and rebuttal thus. Does that not mean that Behrman has benefited from the one swallow thesis? I don't think Behrman's ready either. Yeah, he was brilliant in Saudi around that Jeddah circuit, but again, that's one performance. How many drivers have come into F1 and put down one brilliant performance only then to disappear off into obscurity? I don't think it's evidence sufficient, and I like your F1 math, Madeline, but I don't think that's where we should be going. Bring him along nice and steady, surely. That's the modus operandi, is it not? Just like they did George Russell. Listen, nobody's going to tell me that at the same age, George Russell was at a better prospect. And look how long it's taken George to get his feet underneath the F1 table at the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth. I think this is techie, and I think Toto Wolff runs himself a risk of spoiling Andrea Kimi Antonelli. You've got to bring these F1 drivers to the boil. Steadily, simmer first, right? You can't just skip out so many steps, not if past this prologue. And again, I'm looking at careers of De Vries and a countless other young drivers who have come and gone. See Mazepin, please see Mick Schumacher. These have all burnt, their flame burned brightly for a very brief, short amount of time, but where are they now? That's not the best way that you get the best out of the best, hottest young prospects, I will contend. And what does this mean for George Russell, since we're talking about him? What does this mean for George Russell as far as his tenure at Mercedes? All of this talk from Toto Wolff, yeah, we want to sign Max Verstappen. Yeah, there's not a team of the 10 up and down the grid that wouldn't want to get Max Verstappen's contract, get his signature. Yeah, Max Verstappen, I regret not signing him back in the day, 2015-16, when I had the opportunity. But yeah, and still, I will do my best to sign him. That's everything that Toto's been saying for the past couple of weeks. So how comes now George Russell finds himself standing up and the music has stopped? He doesn't have a chair, does he? There is rumour about Audi and Sauber after him to sit alongside Nico Hülkenberg. Sign George Russell then, Toto Wolff. Give him a contract extension, surely, in this meritocracy thing that we call Formula One. If Checo Perez can get himself a cheeky 1+1, his material underperformance notwithstanding, then surely George Russell can, particularly on the back of his performance at the Belgian Grand Prix, having nailed that, but for a cheeky underweight car. Like, come on, Toto, what are we doing? If you are invested in George Russell, King George Russell, first of his name, PLC, then extend that chap's contract. We are August 2024. His contract ends at the end of 2025. What are we doing, chap? And again, I think Toto Wolff is playing his hand, therefore, in his inaction, making it clear yet and still that Andrea Kimi Antonelli plus Max Verstappen is the pole sitter. That's what he wants, really. If you ask him, in his mind's eye, if he's being 100% honest, that's what he will go for. He will happily jettison, kick, drop, drop kick George Russell in his chest if it means getting a handle on Max Verstappen. Very quickly though, Max Verstappen, what's going on with him? Aston Martin, yeah? Is that where we're going with Max Verstappen? Surely not. I mean, come on. Aston Martin. I never would have thought that we would be having this conversation, not as soon or recent as a month ago. Aston Martin doesn't even make sense, does it? Lawrence Stroll settings. What? Why? Well, as far as an F1 equation, the complexion is vastly different than it was 2-3 weeks ago. If you can get Adrian Newey alongside Dan Fallows, alongside a couple of other Go team minds that whose names elude me, alongside Honda as a power unit for 2026 exclusively. That for Maximilian Verstappen is a completely different proposition. Then that makes sense. All of a sudden, does it not? And again, if you're talking push factors away from Red Bull, harmony and a decent car are two things that he wants and doesn't have, as at the 8th of the 8th. 2024. Oh, the humanity. Visual says George wasted 3 years at Williams. Did he though, Visual? Did he? Maybe he wasted one of those 3 years, but I'd argue George is still very raw, Visual, for me. He's still got a lot to learn and he's still developing, still in the formative phases of his F1 journey. You can still see, listen, brilliant as he was at the Belgian Grand Prix, you can see these mistakes creep in. He still doesn't chew his F1 food before he swallows. He still makes far too many mistakes towards the latter stage of the Grand Prix. Singapore was a brilliant example. Australia this year. So I think he's better for that learning curve. Put him in a car where it doesn't matter, where there aren't eyes upon him. Many F1 aficionados and paddock insiders have said this, right? That's the gift and the curse as far as a tenure at a Williams, because you get to cut your teeth. Nobody's watching Williams, but Andrea Kimi Antonelli in that Mercedes all of a sudden, plus replacing Lewis Hamilton, not insubstantial, not small shoes, is all of a sudden a different proposition as far as the pressure that circumstance comes with. Rest assured, if Kimi Antonelli is not the one, not the chosen one, not Neo in the Matrix, then he will get found out very, very quickly, because that pressure cooker is serious. It's of consequence. Those mistakes, the eyes of the world, both F1 fans and F1 sports media will be watching him, waiting to criticise. So I just think it's a different proposition. You want to give that chap the best chance of success, then drop him in a Williams. It's very romantic. And again, we as F1 fans do this from time to time, do we not? Rush them along. Listen, if he's good enough, then he's old enough. Put him in. Let's see how he does. Sink or swim time. And I don't think that's not the modus operandi. And I don't think that's the way. If we're being smart and sensible, why ruin him? Put him in a Williams, give him the same tenure, bring him in at the same rate as George Russell was. And again, George was probably a better driver at the same age. So why not give him then the same sort of induction period? Probation period is probably the better term. Techie, George wasted 3 years. Ollie Behrman is going to get destroyed next year. So go on then, Ollie in and amongst Esteban Ocon. I mean, we've read this book already. I don't know why F1 doesn't learn from the mistakes of Christmas past. It's doomed. Teams are doomed to repeat them since they haven't learned from them. Esteban Ocon is a killer. We've seen it. See the Monaco incident with Gasly. He almost can't help himself. He's a moth to a flame. As soon as he sees an opportunity, however reachy or opportunistic, however low the probability of him nailing it and sticking the move, he cannot help himself, Esteban Ocon. That's who he is as a driver. That's how he's wired. That's his DNA and his fundamental constitution. So why then put him alongside an Ollie Behrman who needs nurturing, who'll need from time to time an arm around him. He'll need an Alonso next to him or a Lewis, not an Esteban Ocon. Esteban Ocon will see Ollie Behrman as food for the taking, and he will take him, but there will be incidents between now and then. They will crash. It's inevitable. And so I think in that sense, this might be Ayo Komatsu's first mistake. But on paper, it looks fantastic. They look like a brilliant driver pairing, don't they? When you look at it on paper, on face value, it makes sense. But sometimes you've got to look at the intangibles. And I think this is where Ayo Komatsu has made a mistake. Gunther Steiner would not make this mistake. Grizzled F1 vet. And I think Ayo Komatsu is a numbers guy. Like, he's a brilliant F1 mind. Like, anybody that you hear talk to him will speak to that. Like, he gets it technically, mechanically. He's there. Like, he's proper, worked at Lotus back in the day and he's got length of service. He knows what to do. But I think he's failing in making this decision. Putting Ollie Behrman in the same car as Esteban Ocon. For Pete's sake. Doesn't it make sense? It makes sense on paper, but the reality sometimes is far divorced from the theory. And that's where I think Ayakomatsu's blind spots lie. Gonna get techie next year. Who can wait for 2025, eh? Oh, not me. He just says Ollie Behrman. LA Thorn. Cam, here's an oddball lineup suggestion. Danny Rick in the AMG to replace Lewis Hamilton. Let Kimi go in with a customer team or another slot to gain experience. I like the second bit, LA Thorn. I desperately want. Listen, I'm U-turning. I'm doing the Helmut Marko thing. What he's done to Checo Perez, massive 180-degree U-turn now. Because I too, a couple of months ago, as recently as a couple of months ago, wanted Andrea Kimi Antonelli to just put him in the Mercedes. It's a brilliant story. He looks like Senna. Sink or swim. F1, right? No. Sometimes you got to take a step back and see the F1 wood for the trees and bring that dude along. Just nice and not nicely, calmly, little by little. Allow him to make his mistakes away from the gaze, that the fierce, judgmental gaze of the F1's press and media. Allow him to just get his feet underneath the table, like George still has yet to do, for Pete's. As brilliant as George is, maiden F2 winner, F3 the same thing, I think, if I recall correctly. He's brilliant, he's a killer, but yet and still he's making mistakes in a Mercedes. You know what I mean? So what do you think Andrea Kimi Antonelli is going to fare? How is he going to fare next year if George can't do it yet and he's still making mistakes? What do we do? I like the first piece of your sentiment, though. There will be one big issue with Ocon. If Ollie Bear can match him, Ocon will not give him it. I don't even think Esteban Ocon give an inch. That's oxymoronic visual. Will never happen. You shouldn't expect something from someone that they're not capable of, that they don't have in their toolbox or artillery. Esteban Ocon has never yielded, ever. That's his gift and his curse, right? That he's an old school one, fiercely aggressive, but you can't fight every fire concurrently, not in Formula One. Like, you've got to decide, pick your battles. I think this is Lewis Hamilton's journey, right? Lewis Hamilton was very similar in 2007 when he first burst onto the scene. He would fight every fire equally aggressively, but now he learns, he understands to be efficient with his energy resources. You can't fight every fire in Formula One. There's simply not time or resource. That's not the way that you manage for your races, nor your championships, nor your career. Be efficient with your energy, and that's a lesson that Esteban Ocon has to learn. And that's why, if you are Ayakomatsu, it's probably a bad decision, especially as far as Ollie Behrman's development is concerned, to put him in the car alongside one Esteban Ocon. It just doesn't, do you know what I mean? Practice and theory disconnect. There will only be issues with Ocon. Read that out already. Smash. Yeah, do me a favour and smash. Hermione. With Newey, Alonso and Honda, a switch from Max to Aston is understandable. In addition, Toto has said a lot of nasty things about Max, and now he's over the top complimentary. Are you reliable then? Hermione, there's threads in there. When did Toto say a lot of nasty things about Max? I think he's been over complimentary of late because he's so keen to get that signature. I would agree with that piece. I can't remember when. Look, if we rewind to 2021, yeah, my criticism of Toto was that he had the opportunity to go as a Mercedes and Sir Lewis Hamilton fan. He had the opportunity on a couple of occasions. Please see Monza as your example, your exhibit A. Toto had the opportunity to go full send on Max Verstappen, rightfully or wrongfully, just like Christian went full send on Lewis. At each and every single opportunity, rightfully or wrongfully, but we couch this conversation, we have this discourse in terms of the competitive landscape, right? Again, look, if I'm in the trenches, notwithstanding his foibles and his managerial mistakes over the past 6 months or so, if I'm in the trenches and I need to pick a team principle to go there with, each and every single day, Andrea Stella is a good shout, but each and every single time in the trenches, when F1's at its most salacious and juiciest, when championships and races are won on the finest of margins, like they were in 2021, if I have the option of taking me a team principle into the trenches, give me Christian Horner each and every single time over Toto Wolff. Mr. Diplomacy, billionaire settings, businessman over racing mind. No, it's not even a decision. I can't even, like, do you know what I mean? That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Toto had the opportunity to go full send on Red Bull and Max in 2021. When else are you going to do it? So I disagree with us slightly. I don't think he's been as harsh on Max Verstappen as he could have been. Now, over complimentary of late, yeah, of course. Max Verstappen remarked as such, didn't he? Toto Wolff's been very nice to me of late. Talking about, what did he say? There's one quote where he said, Red Bull aren't winning races, Max Verstappen is. And I think he's right. I think Max has proven himself. He's proven that to be true over the past few months, right? Please see Spain. That car shouldn't have won that race. Max Verstappen dragged it to 25 points, kicking and screaming. They're struggling with it. They're struggling with the handling dynamic. Max Verstappen is struggling to get it turned in. And that's the handling dynamic that he's leveraged, weaponized even, to such great effect over the past couple of years. Front nose heavy, right? On the nose, as they say. Sensitivity settings in extremis, per Alex Albon on the High Performance podcast. That's what Max Verstappen doesn't have anymore. And if Lawrence Stroll in an Aston Martin, with the help of Adrian Newey and his mates, Dan Fallows et al., if they can offer him that, if they can offer him capital investment ad infinitum, 250 millions worth of factory, I don't know how many millions worth of wind tunnel, etc., then Max would have to take that seriously, notwithstanding the fact that he said recently, Red Bull are my family and I want to stay there. Or even, has he said that? Has Max Verstappen said that in earnest? He said that, I know that he said that Red Bull are his family, and he spoke about like the trust and investment that they've given to him at the outset, 2015-16, him being brand new, and that he's grateful for that. But when he was asked, I'll never forget when he was asked at the press conference a couple of races ago, on 2 or 3 occasions, are you going to stay with Red Bull? Max, bless him, danced around the subject. The one word that he wouldn't say was yes. It was like, listen, we need to work on the car. We need to make, like, it was everything apart from answering in the affirmative. And then he was asked again, wasn't he? Oh, you've got a contract to 2028, Max. Are you gonna? Rachel Brooks asked him, are you gonna stay at Red Bull, notwithstanding all that's gone on? Oh, like Max just danced around, circumvented and circumlocuted the answer. Just didn't want to give the yes. The Y word he was allergic to almost. And then he was asked a third time by a Brazilian journalist, I want to say, Max, do you want to just nail this? Do you want to put a pin in all this and just make it very, very clear that you're going to stay at Red Bull? And then he said yes. Then finally, when pushed on more than one instance, he committed, didn't he? I don't know. It's getting techie. Maybe I'm reaching there, but I wouldn't, listen, gun to the head, would I bet on Maximilian Verstappen seeing out his contract at the Bulls that are red through to 2028? I'm not sure, I'll be honest with you. Outlaw Michael Lewis also makes rookie mistakes. Qatar first corner, Alonso, Spa, Monza, Piastri. I think that's to say, I don't disagree with you, Outlaw. Michael Lewis also makes rookie. Qatar first corner. So okay, so Lewis, you're talking about Qatar. But look, does Lewis still make rookie mistakes, or does Lewis make mistakes that are a function, or were a function, of his position in the grid? I had this argument with Shez on the Shakedown recently that I said that surely Lewis is making more mistakes now than he has done in recent memory. So if you take 2018 peak Mercedes time, Lewis barely put a foot wrong. So why then is he making mistakes now? Why did he make Qatar? Why did he make Belgium with Alonso? Surely that's indicative, I argued, of Lewis losing a step, 39, soon to be 40 years old. We know there's not been many 40-year-old champions in F1 history, only 3 from memory. Jack Brabham, 1966, Fangio, 57, Farina, 50. There's not been many. So surely that means if you're going to extend that and apply that broadly, because that's the process-focused approach, right? Look at the evidence as it speaks to you broadly in longer form. then it's not likely that we can have another 40-year-old champion, not in the modern day era. However, Shes countered me on this. Listen, Cameron, you're not comparing apples with apples. In 2018, Lewis at his brilliant best had a car that he'd drop it on pole and do a lights to flag victory each and every single time. Now in 2022, as an example, or 2023, Flotsam and Jetsam F1 in that W13 and 14, those cars were rubbish. So Lewis Hamilton was having to learn new skills in fighting through the carbon fibre zone, where he was fighting Bottas in the other car previously, in the other Mercedes. Now he's having to fight with bloody Mazepin and like Alonso in an Aston Martin for 12th and 11th position. So it's a very new, different circumstance. I only say that to say this, Outlaw. When you're comparing these things, it's important that you recognise where you're not comparing apples with apples. In absolute terms, absolutely, Lewis Hamilton has been making more mistakes than he has previously. But again, it's not an apples for apples circumstance, is it? All of them make mistakes. All of them make mistakes. All F1 drivers are created equally, but some, they say, are created more equal than others. Visual. George's mistakes are funny and stand out because it's a lack of concentration, so they stand out more. Is it just a lack of concentration, though? Visual? Is it really just a lack of confidence? I think George, if George has a bit of Esteban on it, not to the same extent as Esteban Ocon, but I think he has Esteban in him. Like it's just a bit of, it's that moth to a flame type thing where you almost can't help him. Singapore was the perfect example of that. There were stakes and there was a victory potentially there for him. 25 points. You could almost see him get over eager, and then he goes and outbreaks himself and yeets it into the barrier. You could almost see that happening from a mile. Do you know what I mean? I remember watching that and thinking, I'm not going to call myself Nostradamus. Everybody can be a god tier Monday morning quarterback, but you could almost feel that George was on the precipice of making that mistake when watching that footage. No? True or false? I don't know. It's a bit techie. 2018-19 was managing how much to win by. Toto even said they would deliberate every year how much to unlock from the engine. Adrian Ewers talked about this in his book as well, using ballast, I can never pronounce that word, putting weights in the car to avert the gaze of the FIA. I think this is what they do. Desperate to beat Hamilton. Mark, there you go. George is very desperate to beat. And why wouldn't he be though, Mark? If you're racing alongside the greatest, or one of the greatest, depending on who you're a fan of, why wouldn't you make sure that, or why wouldn't you be overly invested, overweight beating your teammate? Because it's one of those ones, you know, like samurai, that like when you kill the best samurai, you absorb their powers. Like that's what George Russell be thinking, right? The credit and accolades that go with beating Lewis Hamilton, 7-time champion, GOAT settings over the course of a championship, surely, even notwithstanding the upgrades and the extra weight that lose, like surely I've got to absorb that. They must give me props now. George will be saying, if I can beat Lewis, if I can beat Lewis, then who can beat me? That's the very basic F1 maths that George will be doing. Oh, and by the way, there is other news that we need to touch on very quickly. Dominic Carly's been talking, hasn't he? Talking about the competitive landscape, the brilliant season that he expects F1 to deliver in 2025, but he stops at 2025. I think these guys need to get ahead of these rules and regs, you know. I will be honest with you. Again, everybody with a sound F1 mind is calling for lighter cars, more noise, better racing, and they're going to switch up the regulations in 2026, and it's going to take us a step back. Remember, each and every single time towards the last stage of the regs, we start to get better racing. James Vowles has come out on the F1 Nation podcast and said this: 2025 could be the best, one of the best F1 seasons that we've seen in recent history. Oh, the humanity. So why change it then? 2021, the same thing, right? One of the best seasons that we've ever seen in Formula One. Since 1950, it was incredible. So why then go and fudge it up? You've laid the ground rules. You have yourself convergence, and you have yourself at least a couple of teams ready to fight for the championship. 2025 will be no different. You have McLaren, you have Mercedes now, you have the balls that are red, and potentially two Scuderia Ferrari fighting for a championship, both drivers and constructors in 2025. So why change it? Why mix it up then, Stefano Domenicali? Here's what this chap's had to say. And again, head of F1, the commercial rights holder arm. I'm very pleased to say what I said at the beginning of the year is exactly what is happening when everybody was believing that I was saying that for political reasons. Domenicali said about his faith that 2024 would not be a damp squid of a single driver dominant season. This will for sure continue into the end of 2025 until the end. You see what I'm saying? Until the end of 2025, this element of sporting action and sporting drama is definitely there. F1. Look at this. That reference to 2025 is intriguing because amid all the excitement about on-track battles now, there is a dark cloud on the horizon relating to the potential downside of the 2026 regulations. Why do we not learn Formula One, please? Can you imagine this? I know it was COVID and the 2022 regulations were set to drop earlier, but there was that. Surely we can take a step back and just apply some common sense. If we're getting brilliant racing now under this set of rules and regs, then extend them. I understand the motivation of Formula One commercial rights holder. I get the sustainability issues. I understand that money is a thing and that socio-economic issues are being presented to everybody, not least the common man, Joe Boggs public. And F1 wants to understand, ingratiate itself with its fans, produce technologies that can drip feed down to my car and your car. I understand all that. I get it all. It's all very nice. Sustainability too. There needs to be a connect, or rather, there doesn't need to be, or there shouldn't be a disconnect between F1 and the way that the world is going right. If sustainability is an issue that we all need to be concerned about, cool. But, yeah, and still first order priority needs to be for F1 racing and competition, and we have it now. And then you're about to go and completely 180 it and fudge with that winning formula, no pun intended. What are we doing here? Honestly, visual, it really upsets me, this, that now we've got proper racing. No longer is it the Max Verstappen podcast each and every single weekend. Now all of a sudden we have ourselves rancor and stakes, the thing that epitomizes, that makes F1 and sports more broadly so brilliant. We've been watching the Olympics, right? And some of the competition is like, I don't really care for the 400 hurdles, I'll be honest. I'm not fussed. But who doesn't want to see Femke Bol against Sydney McLaughlin? I want to see, I will be watching live. I can't wait for it because it's stakes and I don't know who's going to win. And both of them are generational talents. What's wrong with that? I'm asking too much, F1, that we can get a couple, more than just 2 seasons of that back to back. James Vance is right. 2025 stands to reason that it will be a blockbuster season, and I can't wait. But bloody Nora, give us more than a couple. Like, we've had to wait long enough since 2021. 2022 was just as you were. 23 as you were. Max Verstappen podcast each and every single weekend. Brilliant, by the way. Again, it would be remiss of me not to point that out, but where was the competition? The landscape was skeweth as far as competition. So then what next? 24, half of 24, we've had a decent season, and it will continue in that same vein, I'm sure. But 25 will be a gangbuster one, and then we get 26. And as you were, one team will make, maybe Mercedes by virtue of their power unit, but one team will make a jump, take a leap on the rest, and have doable competitive advantage. And what will therefore happen to the landscape they're running? No bueno. Oh, and by the way, McLaren are talking, yapping. Zach Brown has things to say. He was surprised by the leap, the rate at which they have closed the gap to Red Bull. Not that they've closed the gap, but how quickly they have. And I think that statement is of material significance, because McLaren at the moment are not moving like the race leader, are they? And it stands to reason. I don't think we should be surprised about that, nor should we be overly critical of McLaren for that. The likes of Red Bull and Mercedes have years at this, thousands, tens of thousands of hours of deliberate practice in with a view to win races and championships. McLaren haven't had that for years. When was the last time McLaren won a race proper, or competed for a season even proper? What, 2007? What? How long ago was that? Ages. Like 17 years. Flipping Nora. So it takes time for McLaren now to get back up to speed and have themselves in a place operationally and strategically where they can compete for 25 points each and every single race weekend. I don't think we should be too harsh on them. But their drivers, one of their drivers is moving like he could be a champion, like he might be up for the challenge that Max Verstappen poses, that beating Max Verstappen represents. That driver has a name. His name is Oscar Jack Piastri. Every time you hear him talk, I'm like, yep, I like the cut of that fella's jib. However, in stark contrast, Lando Norris. I don't know. I want to love Lando Norris. I really do. I still like him. But every single time I hear him talk, it's a diatribe about his weakness, his mental vulnerabilities. And whilst that's endearing, I don't know. Is that how champions speak? Is that how a Senna would have spoken, or a Michael Schumacher, or very recently, most recently, a Max Verstappen or a Lewis Hamilton? Is that how champions speak? And that's not to say that they don't also have those vulnerabilities. Brundle and Herbert and et al. Were talking about this very recently on a podcast. Coulthard too, talking about doubt. Brundle said that all drivers, even the greatest ones, have this doubt that they would turn up to testing and be like questioning themselves. Could I still do it? Like kids going back to school after summer holidays. Do I still have the capacity physically and mentally to do it? That there is always that doubt, even in the greatest ones. But to speak about it so openly and so frequently, Lando, I think there is a question to be asked, and I don't think you can do the first and not have that drip feed through to your performance in real time. There are things that you've got to fix for, Lando. Most of all, your starts. Starts have been rubbish, chap. If you could have got a decent start once in a while, you would have more victories to your name. Abso-flipping-lutely. To sort for that. And I don't think talking about this so honestly and earnestly, so frequently, yet again on the High Performance podcast with Jay Humphries, I'm not sure that helps Lando. Now listen, I'm not a sports psychologist, nor am I a performance expert. But if past his prologue, surely there's something to be said for compartmentalising this. Why do you need to share so openly and honest all the time, Lando? Makes no sense. Safety car gifted him, Michael. I don't disagree. And he acknowledges that. It's quite humble and almost too honest, Lando. And I just don't think, I tell you somebody you're not going to get that approach from. That leaning into their vulnerability and their ostensible weakness mentally. Oscar Jack Piastri is not having that. If you're going to be so honest and earnest, like Lando Norris is, the one driver that you don't need in the car opposite you, on the opposite side of the garage, is Oscar Jack Piastri. Because you'll see that. He'll see that and he'll take advantage of it. He'll weaponize it. He'll leverage it. He'll take that and put it in his back pocket and he'll use it at the critical times. That's who Oscar Piastri is, because he is a killer. You know what else? Go and listen to the podcast with his old lady on there. Oscar Jack Piastri's mom. Have you heard it? Red Flags podcast. I haven't listened to it. I only listened to the first 5 minutes. But if you want to know where Oscar Jack Piastri's stoicism and his mental resilience and fortitude comes from, you only need to go and watch that podcast. When you hear his mom has a steel in her voice. It's tangible almost. It's one of those, those salt of the earth type people. No nonsense, no moaning. Dust yourself off, mate, and get back on the horse. You can see that in his mind, like the cut of his mom's jib. I absolutely love it, and you can see exactly from where Oscar Jack Piastri gets that sort of attitude from. He won't tolerate that from Lando Norris. and indeed he's going to weaponise it and seize on it. You said Alonso braked hard twice. Chiba, Lando has little to no ego. Chiba, do you think? I don't know if that's right, Chiba. I don't know if that's right. Lando in this interview, this latest one, said that it helps him to be honest and earnest, to lean into his mistakes, to be self-critical, to be a glass half empty type driver. I question that. I'll be honest with you. I question that. I listened to another podcast the other day, Michael Johnson, again, high performance podcast with Jake Humphries. And he was asked the question, how much of what you do, again, Michael Johnson, you guys know he's 400, 200, the greatest 400 meter runner, the greatest 200 and 400 meter runner to have ever lived. And again, he's listen, as far as resilience and overcoming adversity, had himself a stroke, overcame that. They didn't know whether he's ever going to be able to walk again. His whole of his right side, his arm and his leg completely seized, no mobility. And this is the type of chap that we're dealing with. Still world record holder. I know he doesn't hold any more world records. Usain holds the 2 and Wade van Niekerk holds the 4. Okay, cool. But you know who 4-time, 5-time Olympic gold medalist. That's the level. When asked, Kelly Holmes had given a response about how much of what she did was mental and how much was physical. And she replied 80% mental, 20% physical. What do you respond, Michael Johnson? Michael responded like this. And I think about this in the context of Lando Norris's approach. And again, the two answers, Michael Johnson's approach is in stark contrast to everything that I hear from Lando. All the self-deprecation and self-doubt and glass half empty type answers. Here's what Michael Johnson had to say. How much of what you did and accomplished was mental as a percentage, as versus physical? Michael Johnson said they were both 100%. That split nonsense doesn't even come into my thinking. I don't care for that. What I wanted to do is do both of them as best as I could. 100% mental, 100% physical. Now, I know he's reframed the question. He hasn't answered it. We're talking about split. And of 100%, you can't have 200. I get it. The maths doesn't work. But you understand what Michael Johnson's saying here. He wants to maximise and optimise for both the mental side and the physical side. And I don't see Lando Norris doing that in real time. How can he be when all he talks about is negativity and all self-doubt and I need to improve and all my starts haven't been good and I need to do this and like, what's that about? Lando, will yourself on, chat, fix for these errors. And the way that you do that, I don't know. I don't have all the answers because I'm not a sports psychologist, right? But I don't think, if I'm a betting man, I don't think the way to do that is the way that he's doing it. Not optimally. Listen, sometimes you will have those people that are very self-deprecating and negative, and you know what I mean? And it will work out. Like, sometimes that works out, but just because you can do it that way, it doesn't mean that's the way it should be done. And that's what concerns me with Lando Norris. I'm honest. I'll be honest with you guys. Ender says, Madeline, except Alonso was apparently driving erratically. We're still talking about George over here. I think Alonso was driving erratically. Alonso drives erratically. Gamesmanship, brinksmanship. But I mean, George was looking at the steering wheel. So what are we going to do here? Like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Do you know what I mean? Chiba, that's what I mean. Okay, his ego is attached to negative. It's a good way of terming it. I like the way you've phrased it there, Chiba. I think Lando does have an ego. I don't know, it's frustrating. Even on that bloody sim race, if you hear him on that sim race, one of the non-sim race racers says, oh, you know what, I'm going to come through, I'm going to win this. And again, he's reaching, exaggerating. He's never going to come through and win it. Not with Lucas Blakely, Lando Norris on there. I think Jarno Opmeer was some serious sim racers. Like a non-sim racer was never going to beat those guys. And Lando Norris says, yeah, that's like me saying I'm going to win the championship this year. I'm like, what? Is that how remote of a possibility you see the champ? You must be bantering, right? But again, you've got to take yourself seriously in Formula One. Otherwise, nobody else will. I just think Lando, I don't know. He's it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, being too negative all the bloody time. And again, I say for the avoidance of doubt, if past his prologue, if the modus operandi most recently in F1 is anything to go by, would Michael Schumacher talk like that? Would you ever hear Lewis Hamilton talking like that, being so openly critical of himself, however endearing that is as a trait and a feature, personality trait? Would you hear a Senna or a Prost? To be fair to him, he's talked about self-doubt. He says, you know what, I think I'm the best. I remember Prost in an interview with Nico Rosberg, and maybe the similarity to Prost, between Prost and the McLaren drivers isn't, maybe it's not Oscar Jack, maybe it's Lando. Because I remember Prost saying, I think I'm the best, on an interview with Nico Rosberg. I think that I'm the best, but I'm not sure. And because I'm not sure, I'm going to do everything within my powers to optimize for my performance and maximize for my opportunity, stack the probability in my favor. That's why he tested so much. That's why Prost would take the medium tyres off one side and put the soft compound. So he'd be running medium on the left side and soft compound on the others, because he wanted to maximise. He wasn't sure that he was the best. So he's going to do everything in his powers to make sure. And I think that's what Lando wants to do. If he has this self-doubt, then he needs to overachieve. He needs to outwork the rest, right? Do everything within his powers to try and nail, maximize his opportunity, try and get himself 25 points, optimize each and every single session, rather than the bloody down talking. Do you know what I mean? If you have that inside you, then foster it, weaponize it, Lando. Please, chap, we're begging you. And that's not to say that I don't like Lando. Like I really do like the guy, and I'm wishing the best for him. But he's got to fix for that, like shift the goalposts as far as his approach. I don't want to hear him pick up the mic every time, be like, oh, negative Nancy. Oh, I've got to improve. Oh, my starts haven't been very good. Oh, I'm gonna, like, it's always the same thing, and I don't think that's gonna help him going forward. He's hoping. And listen, he's got his sports psychologist that he speaks to, and he's got his team around him, and you know what I mean? Hopefully they can help him. He needs to sort out the starts. But Oscar Jack Piastri, for the avoidance of doubt, is coming. That Piastri train is never late. F2 champion in his first season, F3 champion in his second season. I think he's the only chap to do that, if I'm honest. He's one of 6 to win F2 at the first time of asking, alongside Leclerc and some other notable names. George Russell, first of his name. Oscar Jack Piastri is coming, potentially not this year, but definitely next. So Lando, times are ticking for you to solve, fix for these problems, and optimise for the not insubstantial opportunity that is before you, chap. Oh, the humanity. Prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.